April 6, 2003. The skies above Baghdad are choked with a raging sandstorm, turning daylight into an orange haze. On the ground, American troops are fighting for their survival at the Muthanna Bridge. Across the river, the Iraqi Republican Guard unleashes tank fire and artillery with brutal precision. Outnumbered, exhausted, and low on ammunition, the Americans radio for help. Their last hope lies in two aircraft slicing through the storm, A-10 Thunderbolts, nicknamed the Warthogs. What followed was one of the most daring and decisive close air support missions of the Iraq War. The mission begins. Flight leader Lieutenant Colonel Raymond Donk Strasburger and his wingman, Captain Greg Billy Bob Thornton, were flying A-10 Thunderbolts near Baghdad that day. They had been tasked with a reconnaissance mission, patrolling the skies to provide support if ground forces came under pressure. But as the sandstorm rolled in, visibility dropped to near zero, making their job nearly impossible. At first, Lieutenant John Coke Blocker's position on the ground, Task Force 269 armor, was pinned down. The elite Hammurabi Republican Guard's T-72 tanks and armored vehicles had locked their sights on the Americans. Coke's desperate radio call cut through the static. "If the Iraqis cross the bridge, it's over for us. We need help now." Without hesitation, Donk and Billy Bob turned their Warthogs toward the battle, plunging into the storm where even radar struggled to make sense of the chaos. Into the storm. Flying low over Baghdad with visibility reduced to a few hundred feet was madness. Anti-aircraft fire, small arms, and RPGs filled the skies with lethal streaks of light. For the A-10 pilots, there was no time to worry about safety. They had to find the bridge and mark targets before the Iraqi armored column overwhelmed U.S. troops. Donk attempted to mark the bridge using smoke rockets, but the system malfunctioned. Improvising under fire, he dropped flares instead, creating a fiery line across the riverbank. On the ground, Coke confirmed the mark. "Donk, you're clear to engage." What followed was textbook Warthog warfare. Strafing runs with the GAU-8 Avenger cannon, the legendary 30mm rotary gun capable of firing nearly 4,000 rounds per minute, tore through Iraqi BMPs and trucks. The sound of the gun was unlike anything else, a deep metallic growl that echoed across the battlefield. The Iraqi armor shuddered under the relentless barrage. Fighting blind. The sandstorm made targeting almost impossible. Donk's onboard ballistic computer crashed, leaving him without the precise aiming reticle he needed. Most pilots would have broken off, but Donk switched to old-school manual sighting, relying on instinct and skill. He lined up his targets the way A-10 pilots had trained decades earlier, squeezing the trigger and trusting the Warthog's firepower to do the rest. Billy Bob, meanwhile, lined up a T-72 tank in his sights. A short burst from the GAU-8 shredded the vehicle's armor, erupting in flames. His radio crackled with confirmation. "Good hit, he's burning on the west edge of the circle." Even as they destroyed enemy armor, the Warthogs drew heavy anti-aircraft fire. Columns of tracers rose through the haze, missing their wings by mere feet. At one point, a surface-to-air missile streaked past Billy Bob's aircraft close enough to rattle his cockpit, but the A-10's rugged design and the pilot's calm under fire kept them alive. Relentless assault. The battle raged for nearly 40 minutes. Donk and Billy Bob flew repeated passes along the Tigris, cutting down Iraqi tanks, armored personnel carriers, and supply trucks. Each run was more dangerous than the last as Iraqi gunners adapted their fire patterns. But the Warthog's armor and low-altitude agility gave them an edge. At one point, Billy Bob spotted another T-72. Diving into the storm, he unleashed a barrage of 30mm rounds that penetrated the tank's weak top armor, igniting its ammunition and turning it into a fireball. Donk, despite his failed targeting system, launched a Maverick missile at a BMP hidden near the riverbank. The missile found its mark, obliterating the vehicle in an explosion that lit up the haze. On the ground, Coke and the soldiers of Task Force 269 watched as the tide turned. The shelling from across the river slowed, then stopped. Iraqi infantry pulled back into the city, leaving behind burning wrecks. The Americans, battered but alive, finally had breathing space. Running on empty. There was one problem: fuel. The mission had stretched far beyond its original timeline, and the Warthogs were dangerously close to bingo fuel, the point where they had just enough to return to base. Donk quickly recalculated, shaving 500 pounds off the reserve fuel requirement to buy a few more minutes of attack time. It was a gamble, but one that gave them just enough margin to finish the fight. With fuel gauges running low, the pair made their final passes. Billy Bob targeted and destroyed an anti-aircraft gun that had been plaguing their runs, while Donk finished off supply trucks and scattered infantry positions. With their job done and relief aircraft inbound, Donk called it, "Coke, we're at bingo. Good luck down there." Aftermath. The battle at Muthanna Bridge ended as a decisive victory for U.S. forces, largely due to the precision and persistence of the A-10 Warthogs. In just under an hour of continuous strikes, Donk and Billy Bob dismantled the Iraqi armored offensive, destroying tanks, personnel carriers, and supply vehicles before they could overwhelm Task Force 2-69. What could have been a devastating defeat turned into a turning point, with American troops holding their ground and reporting only minimal casualties. The Republican Guard, once considered Iraq's elite, was left in disarray, its momentum broken and its firepower reduced to smoldering wrecks along the riverbank. Recognition for the men involved came swiftly. Lieutenant Colonel Raymond Donk Strasburger and Captain Greg Billy Bob Thornton were both awarded the Silver Star, one of the nation's highest honors for valor in combat. On the ground, John Coke Blocker's composure under fire and his ability to coordinate life-saving air support earned him the Bronze Star and the Air Force Commendation Medal of Valor. Their actions not only safeguarded their comrades in arms, but also became a powerful example of how air and ground forces can operate seamlessly under the most extreme conditions. The mission also reinforced the A-10's legendary reputation as a soldier's aircraft. Built to endure punishment, fly low, and unleash unmatched firepower, the Warthog once again proved its worth as the ultimate close air support platform. For the soldiers pinned down at the bridge, the roar of the GAU-8 cannon was not just the sound of a weapon, it was the sound of survival. This episode became one more chapter in the Warthog's enduring story, a testament to the machine's resilience and the bravery of the pilots who flew it into the storm. Legacy of the Warthog. The April 6th mission near Baghdad wasn't just another sortie. It highlighted the essence of what makes the A-10 unique: survivability, firepower, and the bond between pilots and soldiers on the ground. For the troops at Muthanna Bridge, the sound of the GAU-8 cannon wasn't just noise, it was salvation. The story also underscored the importance of close air support in modern warfare. In a conflict where technology often overshadowed human bravery, it was the skill and determination of two pilots flying low and slow through a storm that made all the difference. When the Warthogs rained thunder over Iraq, they did far more than destroy enemy armor. They protected lives, shifted the momentum of battle, and carved a story of courage that continues to inspire. This mission became proof of why the A-10 remains irreplaceable in the eyes of soldiers who depend on close air support in the most desperate moments of war. And this wasn't the first time American aircraft changed the tide of history. Back in 1991, Iraqi MiGs nearly managed to bring down US F-15s in the skies. What unfolded in that dogfight is a story you won't want to miss, so make sure to stay tuned for our next video. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more incredible stories of history, courage, and combat to life.